Tina Campbell is my next guest via Zoom. Tina says this apology is a step in the right direction. There, of course, is more to be done. Tina's a registered nurse herself from ʷəŋiʔnəŋ Cree Nation, which is also known as Moose Lake. So that's about 460 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg. She does now live in Saskatchewan, and that's where we've reached her this morning, as I mentioned, via Zoom. Hi to you.
Hello.
You have this beautiful story about your initial thoughts when you first heard the CMA will be making the apology, and it has to do, I understand, with something that you actually made for a fellow colleague that was there yesterday during this. Can you share that?
Yeah, so at the beginning of August, I was contacted by a former colleague of mine that I worked closely with in Nunavut when I was there up nursing as a TB nurse. And she told me about this ceremony that was happening and this apology that the Canadian Medical Association was going to do in BC. And she really wanted some guidance on how to, she wanted my opinion or my guidance on how to represent, Indigenous culture, her ties to the North, and tuberculosis as well. So I offered to make her a ribbon skirt, which I just started learning how to make in my culture. So I made her a ribbon skirt, and I reached out to my cousin Baleen, who is a very amazing and talented beater. And we came up with this design of lungs. So she wore it. She shared a picture yesterday, and she just looked beautiful. But we just wanted to tie that Indigenous culture and our tie to tuberculosis care for her. So when I learned about this apology, I started to kind of research, and I think it's excellent that it took place yesterday. I was able to tune in to some portions of it. I was busy in meetings all day, but it was really well done.
Obviously, you absorbed the apology as a medical professional yourself, as a nurse, but I understand you also absorbed it thinking, maybe reflecting on personal experience that happened to you in the medical system. In so much as you don't mind sharing, I believe you were 17 when this, when this happened, and it still stays with you.
Yeah, so I was a university student, so I lived in Inuit Nunavut, and I was a student actually in Saskatchewan. And accessing care, I'm visibly Indigenous, and I feel like sometimes I do experience discrimination up front. I've experienced it my whole life now that I've come to learn what discrimination is. And I had actually shared an experience last year with CPC about, I had gone for a simple medical procedure, but in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, okay, I must look presentable. I must look, like I know kind of what I'm doing, I guess, just because I wanted to be treated in a way that I'd get the best care possible, which is unfortunate. But it's because of that experience when I was younger that kind of still follows with me today. And, when you think about that personal experience of mine and how it still continues to affect me, I'm in my 30s now. You really understand how experiences from family members previous to us, those feelings about healthcare and that mistrust can be passed down through generations. So, especially as you so eloquently said just now, right? You said, I'm not going to say it as well as you did, but you said you know what it was now. You can name it as discrimination now upon reflection. But in that moment when you're 17 and you went in the office and somehow you felt that they weren't seeing you as someone who, they weren't seeing you. They weren't hearing you. Did you feel dismissed, I understand, in that moment? Yes, because when, I view it as if somebody's coming to a healthcare professional, to a clinic, they want help. They're there because they don't know what to do, and people are at their most vulnerable when they're not feeling well. So it's really important to welcome everybody with that compassion and understanding and equality. People are scared as well when they don't understand what's going on with them. So it really is the approach, and it goes from there's all these views and it's because of all the stuff that's happened in the past, all the, institutions and the views that the government had placed in these policies as well, that are very racist and discriminatory, unfortunately. And as a healthcare provider, that's a big reason why I came into healthcare, was because I wanted to be a safer place for Indigenous peoples when they're accessing care, to see me and, hey, I'm one of you, and hopefully, working with my non-Indigenous colleagues and educating them on why things might be a certain way with Indigenous people accessing healthcare.
You mentioned that you felt in this situation, what sparked you to go into healthcare in part was also what you experienced, that you felt brushed off. But why did you say you sort of thought about afterwards, dressing in a different way before you go to an appointment and such? How does that relate to how you were treated in the doctor's office?
Well, I was a student at the time, so I was unwell too. So I was probably looking a little, in sweatpants and really unwell. And I just was not treated very well. So that kind of deferred me from accessing healthcare while I was down here going to school. And it was completely different when I would go and access care when I went back home for the summers and whatnot. So, and as a healthcare provider today, unfortunately, I still hear those experiences. I work with First Nations community members, and a lot of the time, we have to refer them because there's no access to certain services in these communities. We have to refer them to city centers or other provincial communities, and they're scared because of the discrimination they face when they go to the hospitals. And I work in tuberculosis, and there's still that huge stigma around that as well. So, they can feel it when people have certain views or don't necessarily want to provide the same care to them for whatever reason.
Because you were stereotyped and judged, and I understand they even somehow they offered you pain medication right away or something that had nothing to do with you seeking answers for what was going on with you.
Yes. Yeah.
You said that part of what motivates you to do your work now is to be there as people see you as a nurse, and you can also educate colleagues. We were started by looking at the apology. We only heard part of it this morning. What is still left to be that you would still like to hear, even though you said you appreciated the apology, and you were able to take it all in yesterday? Where do we go from here now?
Well, as we know, in 2015, we had the Truth and Reconciliation released the 94 calls to action. And from 18 to 24, those are specific to health. And specifically call 24, and that, just states that medical professionals, educational facilities teach the history and the historical treatment of Indigenous people within the healthcare system and education systems, and so that people are aware and can tailor their care and have understanding and compassion for the populations that they're serving. Another huge reason why I became a nurse as well, and specifically in tuberculosis, was my grandmother and my aunt were sent to TB sanatoriums in Fort Capel in the 50s, and learning about their experiences as well, and how that kind of affected their trust in systems as well. And people say historical, and I try to use that term lightly because my aunt is still alive today. So that I don't really consider that historical if these survivors are still, walking and breathing and carrying these experiences. And
we have to be mindful of the use of that word.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did she watch the apology yesterday?
I have not been able to see if she has or not, but I definitely will check in.
We really appreciate you being so open with us, Tina, sharing your personal experiences and, of course, your experiences now as a nurse and the ongoing work that you are doing. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
That's via Zoom live with us this morning. Tina Campbell, registered nurse from ʷəŋiʔnəŋ Cree Nation, also known as Moose Lake. She now lives in Saskatchewan. If you want to read more about the apology that the CMA made yesterday, you can see it and find links to the full apology on our website nationally at cbc.ca.